My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and beer.
Years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here of Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. I just wanted to take a moment, of course, to thank our partners over at Prepared. Partnerships like this definitely help us continue to grow, continue to put out lots of resources, continue to go out to conferences and visit you folks and spread the message that the world needs more dispatchers. You can check out more about Prepared at prepared911.com. Very excited today about this episode. It is Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there listening. Hope you're having a wonderful, love-filled day. Hopefully your call volume reflects love and peace and not drama. But I actually got to meet my guest today in person at the last conference we went to, Be the Difference. So it's just one of those full circle moments where I get to virtually meet folks, meet them in person by going to these conferences, and get to share their stories with you. My guest today has over 12 years of experience in a more rural dispatch setting in Southeastern Montana and is committed to creating a positive environment in her center. My guest today, Jane.
Hi.
Hi, Jane.
Nice to see you again.
I know, it's so nice to see you. It's funny.
Yeah.
When you walked up to me at the Be the Difference conference, Jane was like, "Me and you, Valentine's Day, we got a date," and I was like, "What?" It was wonderful.
Good.
It's really funny because there's always a lot going on, right, at those conferences.
Oh, yeah.
The last thing I'm thinking about is my Google Calendar.
Right.
And like after you walked away is when it clicked. I was like, oh my gosh, we probably have an interview on the 14th.
Yeah, I was trying to like backpedal out of that. That was a little.
I was like, I'll take a dozen roses, you know.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, you know what? Your wife was very gracious and yep, that was all right. You know, walked away unscathed, a little embarrassed, but unscathed.
Oh my gosh. It was but it speaks to like meeting folks in person and like, you know, I always talk about how it's such a good, weird experience because I virtually communicate with so many of you folks. I like to think that I'm pretty active in responding and, you know, giving back what you guys give me. And then getting to meet you guys in person is always such a surreal experience for me, you know. I really do enjoy those moments. So that was a fun one.
I think it's probably, we feel like, and we have connected with you in this medium. And you know, we take for granted that you have no idea who we are. So when I walked up like that, I was so excited that it was you.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've been thinking about doing this for so long. And so I was a little bit nervous too. But it just came out. But I am representing.
Hey, there we go.
I'm representing, so that was fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we both, was that your first time at the Be the Difference conference?
Yes.
It was such a good conference.
It blew me away.
Right?
It blew me away. I am amazed at the ability of people to relive those horrible days for the benefit of others. I just think it's really brave and it's so intentional and so purposeful. And I'm glad, I think they have mechanism in place to take care of themselves with their mental health and wellness, which is so important. But I was blown away.
Yeah. And for those of you who are listening who didn't catch my episode covering it, we had just went to the Be the Difference um conference. It's a yearly conference that's hosted by the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. They partnered with the Healthy Dispatcher this year to put on the conference, and
Yeah.
the foundation was born of a terrible tragedy. Denise Amber Lee was a victim of a stranger abduction. Unfortunately, because of some situations with cross agencies, dispatchers, as Nathan described, the perfect storm of things going wrong. Unfortunately, they did not apprehend the subject before Denise Amber Lee was murdered. And from that, this foundation was born where Nathan took a really tragic situation and created this foundation to support dispatchers, where he really did have an opportunity to hate dispatchers, just to say it plain and simply. But instead, he chose kindness, he chose grace, he chose education, to help support dispatchers and provide training. And that's kind of the premise of that conference. Is it's very training heavy.
Yes.
The vendors were only there for one afternoon essentially, and an evening, and then they were very intentional of wanting you to be in classes, wanting you to be learning. They created a whole workbook. I've never seen it. I mean, it was very intentional. It was such a good conference. And if you can go to a conference, highly suggest going to that one.
Oh, yeah. I'm already paid up for Myrtle Beach.
Hey, I'm gonna be there.
I told my boss if I have to pay for my own self, I'm going. You can't keep me here.
Yeah, Myrtle. Yep,
so
next year it's Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So definitely check it out. I believe it's deniseamberlee.org, if off the top of my head. But yeah, great conference to go to. Definitely a great conference.
Yeah. And it gives you a kind of a boost, when you go to things like that, because, and especially for us, I don't know how it is in bigger agencies really, because I've only done walkthroughs in those types of places, we make friends with people at conferences and they go, oh, come look at our center. So that's what we do. But it's not easy that's why I love the social media site, and how we've been able to develop this. I love platforms like yours. I feel like, and that is part of, maybe the downside is that we feel like we know you already. I do think that it's important because it has a tendency then to bring us all together in a way that we have never been able to before. You're not in a bubble anymore. With just, your 4 or 5 coworkers. You have such a broad reach. And it's just so great. And then go to those things. We had the people from our 911 CTO social media page that asked to go to dinner and share ideas. I got so many business cards and so much networking done. It was amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And that's the same here. People come up to me, ask me to consult, there's all these opportunities, just even if you're not there, representing a business, just the connecting with other dispatchers, hearing how folks are dealing with similar problem situations. I always find it so interesting how dispatch is just, we're all folks doing the same job in so many different ways. I mean, we could do this job 100,000 different ways. And I'm just amazed how we can do it that way. And it can just be so different in each agency, even though we're all trying to, get the same mission across. It's always blows my mind.
Because you have different, it's I guess, I don't know how you would think of it really, but there are different methods, even though you're right, your mission is the same. You're accomplishing it in a different way
Mhm.
because of the size of your agency, because of the equipment that you use, because of all these other reasons. But we are all dedicated professionals, and that is one of the things that inspired me this time, was seeing people who were, not in a great place, who needed support, who needed encouragement, and we were able to provide that. Somebody else who was, on the cusp of doing something amazing in their career, that was something we could celebrate. And so there's all these different dynamics when you go to something like that. And
Yeah.
it was amazing. I loved it.
Awesome.
And
Well,
you inspired me
aw.
too. No, I mean, not for anything, because you come to a business like this, and I came into this career pretty late in my life.
Mhm.
And it was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up for many reasons. But one of them was pretty practical. I needed money,
Yeah.
needed a job. And it's
Oh.
not, it's interesting because it's not something that I have ever thought about doing. I loved the law. I was a legal secretary in my other life, uh,
Mhm.
before children, and not gave up my career, but I transitioned from a working person to a stay-at-home mom.
Mhm.
And then after I got a divorce, and my kids were in school, and I just needed something. And
Mhm.
this opportunity came up, and at first I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this. This looks a little daunting."
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that when I started in 2011 in this small agency, the technology wasn't what it is doing now even. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like,
Uh-huh.
we didn't do cards or anything, but
Yeah.
we may as well have had. I feel like a dinosaur anymore, but it's kind of crazy, how the doors just open, right? The doors
Yeah.
open. And there's things that I've wanted to do in my life, and have gotten more serious about due to other issues in my life. And I've just gotten more serious about my purpose. Um, Everybody wants to leave something behind,
Mhm.
right? Everybody
Yeah.
wants to leave a
Heck yeah.
legacy. And I think uh, for me, and then for meeting you, for going to this conference, it's just solidified for me that we all have something to contribute. I never thought that I did, because here I am in this tiny little town, and doing these tiny little things, and it didn't seem like I really had much to offer
Yeah.
to anybody in our community. Because what do I know? I
Mhm.
don't work in a big agency. I'm not like, fighting for a spot to police ditch. I got to answer the phone. I got to dispatch my people. I got to make phone calls. I have to notify. I'm texting. I'm doing all the things, and sliding my chair back and forth from one station to the other,
Yeah.
trying trying to keep my head above water while I do something that's emergent.
Mhm.
And we don't have that. We have one person on at a time. If we're lucky, our detention officer knows how to answer the phone, you know, and you're like screaming in the in the radio, please come and help me, because I'm drowning up here. Um,
Yeah.
so we've been very fortunate that we have people that are willing to step up and help, but I just feel like maybe I do have something to say. Maybe
Heck
I do
yeah.
have something to contribute. Maybe there is something that somebody can learn, from me or from my experience, what to do or what not to do.
Yeah.
And that's good too. That's got meaning and purpose.
Heck yeah. And it's always interesting when I talk to folks, especially folks at rural settings, one person dispatch centers, because you folks do a heck of a job. I mean, I we can go
Uh,
down to two in my center. as a minimum, and I think that is wild. So I
Mhm.
can't
It can
imagine
be.
being
Yeah.
solo, having to use the restroom, and that's when the
Oh,
phone rings. It's not when you don't, have to, it's when you have to
that's
use
right.
the restroom is when stuff starts to pop off. So,
Oh, yeah.
you know, you
There's
turn
ways to do that too. We have ways.
you turn
We
the
have
emergency
ways.
tones on. You guys
Oh,
aren't doing
man.
anything while I'm
You try to mitigate. You try to mitigate, but it gets hairy sometimes.
heck
Boy, I'll
yeah.
tell you.
Yeah.
But
And I mean,
it's really interesting because when I first this is actually a funny story. My first supervisor was my uh, she did the first part of my training, and she was spectacular, and she taught us how well, that sounds bad. She gave us tips of how to pee in dispatch. That's how yeah, how
that
you had to do it,
yeah.
where the bathroom was, how and how to do it so that you
Mm.
didn't get seen by anybody, you know, and how to do it as fast as you possibly can. And I'm not joking. There were some times when my officers would come in on purpose and I'd go, "Hey, could you watch the phone for me?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, Jane, no worries." And they'd be out there yucking it up and talking and stuff. And you could, of course, the bathroom was basically under the stairs. It was like
Yeah.
Harry Potter's bathroom, and they would call 911 on purpose while I was in the bathroom.
Oh,
So,
those
oh yeah,
men.
mhm. Oh yeah, they were like, Jane, hurry up! The 911, it's ringing!" And I ran out there with like pulling my pants up, doing the whole thing, and there they were.
The disrespect. You're like, "Yeah, don't
Oh, it
worry,
was
getting all the paper
awful,
calls later." All the
and I
paper
would
calls,
comfort them and everything. I mean, seriously, how could you do that to me? I don't know. So yeah,
yeah.
gets interesting.
Yeah. Well, how did you like I know you said that got into dispatch, post-divorce but how'd you find it? Like how did that job stumble into your lap, as they say?
So I was um, working part time for an attorney in a tiny little town.
Mhm.
Um, but it wasn't enough hours. I wasn't getting enough hours.
Mm,
And
mm.
so um, I started looking at state jobs. I started looking at all these things. Well, this would come up or that would come up. And I'm like, and I was substitute teaching too. I love kids.
Mhm.
I was doing that as kind of a side gig. And it ended up this thing was on job service
Hmm.
and I hardly ever looked at that, but for whatever reason, and I was like, dispatcher, 911 dispatcher, what is that? You know,
Yeah.
I had no idea. I knew that when you called 911, you got a hold of somebody,
Mhm.
but I didn't know what it was that they did.
Yeah.
I just knew you called up and they sent somebody. I had
Mhm.
no idea of any of the back stuff. So I called, I put in an application, and the director called me, and I was shocked, actually. I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'll try," And it has been a wild ride
Yeah.
since that day, and I'm telling the truth because it gets into your blood. Public service is a gift to us, really.
Mhm.
Being able
Mhm.
to do this job is for me a gift. You know,
Mhm.
I I was raised that you served others.
Mhm.
My dad was a minister. It was very ingrained in us that you gave to others. It was always you give out, you give out, you give out.
Mhm.
Um, and so, but I also came with that mentality that we don't have time to bleed either,
Mm.
you know?
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
have that very strong work ethic. I have that very strong urge to serve. And then that whole, you're going to be okay, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, keep going, you know, you just slap a Band-Aid on it and keep going. And so that almost is like a perfect storm to come into. And trying to figure out who you are after years of being, you know, not really knowing yourself. You know, I love my children. I loved being their mom. I still love being their mom. You know, have great kids, but you lose yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know nobody likes to talk about that because but it's real. I wouldn't trade those days for anything, but I had a vision of my life that was, I was going to be a lawyer. I thought for sure I was going to go to law school. That was my dream. And I put it on the back burner and I thought, well, I'll just go back to school after I'm done. And, you know, well, life has other things. And I'm not sorry for those things because it makes me who I am today. I'm not sorry for any of the good or the bad or the indifferent, nothing. Regret is a waste of time, I think.
Yeah. But, you know, it does speak to a reminder for all of us, you know, we're people outside of our relationships.
Yes.
And that includes our kids, it includes our partners, it includes our jobs, you know. And I think in dispatch, in life, sometimes we get really caught up in the blending of like our career and our personal life, you know, stepping away a little bit, having a separation. We should all have that. A little separation from our kids, a little separation from our partners, because we're all individuals, you know, outside of those partnerships, including the work life. So, you know, I think that you figure that out is amazing because a lot of people don't, you know, and if you're listening, like that's okay. To like two of those things can exist at the same time. I can love my kids and I can love myself. You know, those things can exist at the same time without taking away from one another. So I applaud that. I think it's such a amazing thing. And
people have a better grasp now though on that than I did when I was coming up. You know, there was again, you give everything, you know, to whatever it is you're doing, 100%. But I think people today have, especially I would say women today, have a better understanding of the fact that they are not selfish. They're not horrible people. They're not mental cases. They're not, if you want to do things like that, it doesn't mean you don't love your children. Like you said, you know, you can have both of those things can exist in the same space at the same time. And we don't give ourselves a break a lot of times. And maybe there, you know, in this period of time in my life, maybe I have given too much to my job. If there is such a thing, I don't know. I feel, and maybe you can relate to this too, with you know, I've had cancer 3 times. So there's a urgency I feel in my life to leave a mark somehow. And I've tried all different things, you know, like I want to do this, I want to do that. You know, but I feel like this job has given me this career has given me purpose and that I do have something worthwhile to share with people. And, you know, sometimes that gets in the way of my real life, you know, but I think it's because it's driven by that. Because I don't know how much time we have left. Nobody's promised any kind of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know, as you said, you know, you're a cancer survivor. I'm a cancer survivor as well, you know, living with cancer. And it's true. You do have this extra sense of knowledge. Like I was diagnosed when I was 9. And I've been messing with it ever since. But there's a realization that happens when you get that kind of diagnosis, when you're a kid versus when you're an adult, right? When you're a kid, it doesn't compute the same way. It's just kind of like, okay, when do I gotta get through these things to be able to go do this thing that I want to do. Like the word isn't so big. But when you're an adult, and gosh, 3 times, let alone, there's a different reality that hits in regards to your time and realizing that it's not promised, and like all those cliche things that we tell ourselves, but it's the reality, right? It's just like, so what am I doing now? And if I was not promised tomorrow, what am I leaving behind? And I think the biggest thing that I've always resonated with is that I'm not going to change the world, but I'm going to change someone's world. And I think the work you're doing at your center, the work every dispatcher is doing, you're changing someone's world probably daily that we're not even really diving in and connecting with. But just knowing that every day you show up, every day you answer that call, you send that help, you are impacting and changing someone's world. So let's make sure it's for the better. Let's be great dispatchers.
I love that. Because, it's like you put your fingerprint on something. You know how this is what it reminds me of. Like, I've watched my officers on ride-alongs. They go up and touch the back of the vehicle that they're going up to, to leave their fingerprints. And that's how I feel like every caller that I talk to, that somehow I'm leaving my fingerprint on them, in some way, or an imprint. And whether they have a good experience with you or a bad experience with you, you're, this is what, the Denise Amber Lee thing is all, hey, this was a bad deal. You don't want to leave that taste in somebody's mouth. I'm going to tell you something. Working in an agency this small, in a town this small, we have maybe 8,000 people in this draw area, maybe in the whole county, right? A 5,000 square foot.
For reference, my high school had 4,000 kids in it.
Yeah, see, I had 400 in my graduating class, right? Here, they have 10 kids in their graduating class, or maybe 20 in this high school here. But I mean, you're talking to your neighbors, man.
Yeah.
Your neighbors are calling you on the phone, screaming, my husband is dead, screaming, my child unalive themselves. What do I do? My wife is laying on the floor. She can't breathe.
No.
What are you doing this is your neighbor. What do you do for or really good friends? I had to tell one of my best friends that her mother had called 911. Her dad went outside the house and didn't come back in. And there he was on the sidewalk in front of their house. And I had to call her up in the middle of the night and say, you need to come to your mom. She needs you. Something is going on, but please don't ask me what it is. Just get there.
Yeah.
And she's like, did something happen to my dad? And what are you going to say?
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough. I mean, I mean, especially, we've talked about this before, the podcast, like being in a rural area or being in an area in general that you live in, and the likelihood of you taking a call from someone being so high. But you're right, like your kind of area, everyone you talk to, I mean, the reality is 9 times out of 10, you're going to answer the phone. It's like, oh, hey, Billy, and that is, I mean, that
and you better be professional, and you better be nice, and you better know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And the other end of it is that they know it's you, right? It's them, but they know it's you. They know when they're making the conscious decision to pick up the phone and dial 911 depending on what day of the week it is, they're going to be talking to Jane, you know, and they're going to see Jane at the supermarket, and they're,
And they do. Oh, yes. And they see my husband in the supermarket. They may or may not say anything to him, you know, and and of course, you know, and in this area, my son works for my agency, or my youngest son works for my agency, and it's interesting because he's a really nice boy, right? And he's not one of those like, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to do, you know, he just plods his way through and does his thing, and he's very effective. He's an amazing de-escalator, and he's given people tickets before, and they actually thank him for it. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And everybody knows him, and everybody knows us, and you know, and there was an incident with somebody local. They weren't too thrilled with him, and they were talking to his dad about 2 weeks after, and they made the connection that it was his son. And they were like, wait a minute, does your son work for the sheriff's office? He's like, that would be him.
Oh my gosh.
Like, oh, we might have been kind of mean to him and whatever, and you know. So then they have egg is on their face, and they're like, well, you know, yeah, it's embarrassing for them.
What is that like, having a loved one on the other side of the radio? Like, I like my officers, you know, and I didn't create them, so I can only imagine what that's like for you, dispatching your kid.
It sucks.
Yeah,
it sucks. I know that he is, you know, it's interesting. He's 24, and he is our baby. And so I have a tendency to maybe be a helicopter mother with my children. And I still, you know, will say to him, well, are you wearing a jacket? How come you don't have your long sleeves on? How come you don't? I did that to him. It was 20 below here the other day, and he came over to grab something to eat, and all he had was his small vest, his long sleeve shirt, and his vest on. And I'm like, "Where's your jacket they gave you?" And he's like, "Well, it's too big it's too big." You know, I'm like, "Well, it's 20 degrees below zero. You gotta have a jacket." And he looked at me like, Mom, I wear a gun. You know, like I am an adult. Don't tell me what to do. I'm like, great. But I always tell, because all the kids here, they call me Mama Jane because I baby everybody. But they I said, well, if it was somebody else, if it was Joe Schmo down there, I would tell him the same thing. Where's his jacket? And he's like, but really, would you?
Yes, that's my stance, and I'm sticking to it.
That's right. That's right. It's my job. So I don't know. It's I do get nervous. I have had to send him to bar fights, to PFMAs. But like I said, that I believe in his ability to take care of himself. He's had good training. He's got great officers that work here that have each other's back. They have each other's backs, you know, and if I could, I would run out in the street. Back him up myself.
They're like, dispatch 49, head that
way. Somebody get in here and cover my bill.
Coffee cup 3.
Yeah, it's one of those things, you know, you hear stories about people who have taken calls from their family in the, you know, not being in the field, but yeah, and I just have to say, so I pray a lot that this goes like, you know, psst, be quiet, and that I treat him like a professional. and not like my son when we're on. So he calls me Jane when we're on duty. I try really hard not to impose that motherly thing on him. And I think once it's got to be intentional. And once I did that, he appreciates it too.
Yeah.
It's not being babied at work.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah.
But
and I think having that boundary probably helps you separate a little bit when you're dealing with those tougher dispatching calls. I mean, it's always going to be your kid, your dispatcher. You're never going to be able to turn that off. But having that boundary already kind of set at work, I'm sure helps eases through the more tougher calls to send your kid to, you know.
I might be like this white knuckle, but he'll never know that on the other end. I don't ever want him to feel like his because I couldn't be professional, something would happen to him that would devastate me. So I always try to give all my officers that, but especially him, that he would know that I got his back on the end. And I've got to do what I've got to do in the way that I'm expected to do it, and for policy and all of that, so that the outcome can be the best for him. And so you just have to.
And I mean, that speaks to anybody who's, you know, maybe dating someone on the other side of the radio, just really close friends with their officers, with their units, is that, you know, creating that boundary, creating that consistent boundary, still recognizing you're human and you have love for these folks and you have love for your family. But at the end of the day, I have to do my job the way I was trained to do it. They have to do their job the way they were trained to do it. And when we meet and we do what we're supposed to do correctly, everyone goes home safe, you know. And that's all we could really hope for and do at the end of the day.
And that's why I'm a big believer in prepare for what you don't know. Train. Read, listen to podcasts, you know, pick people's brains, and which is why I love that community that we have created. That you can reach out to somebody and not feel stupid and not say, hey, I'm from this tiny little agency. What are you talking about? I never did that before. But what you have can help me. You know, and I need that. I need not to feel alone. I need to not feel like I'm the only one who goes through these things. It's hard to talk about, I think, too, with the people that you work with all the time, because you don't want to be seen as the weak link, or you don't want to be, I don't know. It's kind of it's a strange.
It's being vulnerable. Being vulnerable is tough, you know? It's not an easy feat.
I encourage others to do it.
Come
to Mama Jane. I'll listen to you.
I'm the same way. I'm like, I'm here for 12 hours. What you want to talk about? Let's talk about it.
That's right. But no, we're not talking about me. We're talking about you.
Oh man, but it's true. Like these communities that we're building, I mean, specifically with Let's Talk Dispatch, we have a private Facebook group that I'm really proud of, in the sense that it's growing, A, and B, it has a place for everyone, including aspiring dispatchers. You know, folks will jump on there and they'll ask questions about the process. They'll be like, hey, I just cleared background, you know, waiting for my call back. And I think there's creating a very positive community where we're helping dispatchers in the door, getting the door, initially with that community. Because one of the things that I'm talking about and going to be talking about in my first session is, you know, retention starts at the application. And I love my platform. I love what I do, but also the reality is Ashley, the stranger on the internet, should not be the most contact your applicants get about the process. It should be from you as the department, because I don't know everything that your department specifically does thinks, needs, etc. I can only give people, my experience, my realm of knowledge from what I've experienced in this line of work. But people come to me asking these very basic questions that it's like, this is what I know to be true, but your department can be different, right? And we should be having that open door, open communication, overflow of communication from our departments. That's where our community should really be starting. And then my platforms and other platforms should be additional, and we should really be building those communities in our centers. And that's one thing that I know you're passionate about, is creating positive environments in our centers, managing conflict in the workplace, and what have you developed in your center to create those foundations, those, communications that are positive, and creating a good environment there.
Well, this is true confession time. I had to check myself first. Had to check myself first. My boss came to me one day and he said, that I basically had the power of good or evil to influence people with. And because you influence people. And I'm like, no, I don't. And they said, oh, you have no idea that your attitude sets the tone. And I am Italian. Part Italian. The good parts of me are Italian. And I am from New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I don't like to sit down. I don't lay down for people. And if you do me dirty, then guess what you're going to get? And so there's that part of me that is like, oh, they're going to do that to us. Guess what I'm going to do? You know what I mean? Yeah. And I write emails and I do the things and I'm like, no, and resist and all the things. So, so my supervisor had gone to Adam Tim.
Okay. Yeah.
Person, right? Yeah. And she came back and she's like, oh my God, I had to check myself. And I'm like, what? She said, yeah, I think I had an attitude like he did. And I'm like, what? She said,
like, what did Adam say to you? I'm going to send him an
email. Like my universe is starting to shake. And she said, no, I did a lot of soul searching. Well, of course, then you see him in person and you realize the kind of person that he is and how he has come from identifying himself as somebody who had burnout, who was not, in a good place or whatever. And then that resulted in him maybe poisoning somebody else. You know what I mean? And so you have to take stock of what you're doing. And I thought that's when I started thinking to myself, if I am doing those things, if I am being, and I'm pretty direct, I'm pretty direct. What you see is what you get. And I don't think there's time to be pussyfooting around. I just say what you mean what you say. Let's get stuff done. Right. I don't understand people that are not able to manage conflict. I don't get it because I don't look for it, but I don't shy away from it. And maybe I'm a little too blunt. I don't know. But I remember telling my children one time, they were just getting under my skin so bad. And I said to them, you are cruising down Disaster Avenue. And they were like, what? I was like, Mom, you're driving down Disaster Avenue. I know what you're doing. And I said, you're going to meet me at Whoop Ass Way. Is pretty much what I said. So this is in my brain. And I'm thinking to myself, cruising down Disaster Avenue. So I went to a instructor development class and I did a paper. I started a paper on cruising down Disaster Avenue. And I realized that you cannot do away with conflict because we are all human beings. ourselves. We're all unique. We bring all of our stuff and
All
our
of it.
baggage,
Oh, all of it.
whether we like it or not. It's a slurry of stuff.
Yeah.
You bring your stuff, I bring my stuff. And we're asking people to give the best of themselves in their worst times, you know?
Mhm.
And for people who are, you know, I might be going through something. And what am I doing then? Am I poisoning somebody else because I'm having a bad day? Or what am I doing? So you check yourself. And I started thinking about that. It's no different to me than you can't legislate equality. Yeah, I don't think you can. It's either in somebody's heart to be fair or it's not. You can say to somebody, hey, you have to do these things XYZ because the law says so, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And you can do that. And we have done that and with a lot of success. But we also know that it doesn't take much for bias and different things like that to come to the surface, right? And
Yeah.
rear the ugly head when people are pushed into a corner or done or whatever, right?
Mhm.
So I thought about that and I thought, well, maybe you can't really resolve conflict. Because if I can't convince you that you need to also check yourself, if I can't convince you that we're doing things the wrong way and maybe we need to kind of take a detour off of this road and maybe pull over into the rest area and take a chill pill or something, you know?
Yeah.
So people are going to decide whether they want to buy in or not buy in.
Yeah.
And I can only tell people, and I do, I will not listen to negative things. I can't do it. My health, I don't think for my own personal, my mental health or my physical health, I don't think I can do it anymore.
Yeah.
To the point of toxicity. I can't do it. And I won't. I just won't. There's my boundary. I'm going to not engage in that kind of conversation with you. I came back from that conference. I put up a picture of Denise Amber Lee. Right next to our atomic clock. I put up the power of choice where he said, you are free to do whatever you want to. You make the choices you want, but you're not free from the consequences of the choice.
Heck yeah.
Do this job with passion or don't do it at all. So I've got
Mm-hmm.
all those things like, so when people look up at the clock, that's what they see. Right?
Yeah.
You have to be reminded of it all the time.
It's true.
You have to be intentional.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
You're doing that in your life.
And I think you spoke to something that's so easy but is so hard all at the same time. It's like if you don't participate in the drama, in the toxicity in your center, it's gonna either dwindle out or it won't be around when you're in the room, which is amazing because it's a boundary you're setting, right?
Yeah.
And boundaries are hard. You know, they're not an easy thing to set.
No.
They're not an easy thing to make people adhere to.
Yeah.
But if you do set that boundary, where it's constantly, you know, I'm coming to Jane and I want to spill the tea and I want to tell her about, you know, so-and-so and what they did. And Jane is just constantly like, no, Ashley, no, I don't want to hear about it. No, I'm eventually going to stop bringing it to Jane.
Right.
And that's one less person that I'm allowed to spread the gossip, allowed to talk negatively about, because the reality is like, we're not perfect at this job. We're making mistakes every single day. If our supervisors listened into our day-to-day, every call that we took, they would always have feedback to give for us to do better, something we missed, something we could have asked, because that's just the nature of this job, is you could always do something better. That's why training is so hard is because we have a system where someone's critiquing every single call you do, and you just feel like you can't do anything right. But the reality is, if you take, an OG dispatcher and put them back in training, they're going to get the same kind of DOR that the new dispatcher is getting.
Isn't that
Because
true?
we can always do better. There's always
So true.
something reflective on our calls that we could ask differently, do better. So know that. Know
Yeah.
that when you're going to another coworker to say that this coworker didn't do XYZ right, know that you didn't do something right either. And
Yeah.
just someone didn't catch it, or
That's
someone
right.
didn't
Yeah. My bad.
didn't yeah,
Yes.
someone
Mhm.
didn't take the time to bother blowing your spot up about it because
Yeah.
it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't an officer
Yeah.
safety thing. And of course, if there's officer safety issues, if there's policy violations, bring that to your supervisor. Your coworker doesn't need to know that. Bring
Right.
it to your supervisor. Those are legit concerns by all
Mhm.
means.
Right.
But if we're just being a little petty,
Mhm.
we're stirring pots a little bit, we can leave that. We don't need to have that discussion, you know.
Right.
But
You have to also understand that venting is fine. Venting
heck
is
yeah.
one thing. Like everybody needs that a little bit,
Mhm.
And I maybe I am the one that people feel like they can tell these things to. But the problem is I know myself, and
Mhm.
I am a pit bull. And
Mhm.
so if you tell me that you have been done an injustice, right?
Mhm.
Somebody has done something to you, and they come to me and they go, Jane, do you know what they did to me? Blah, 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 blah. And this is the
Yeah.
situation. And they know that I am not going to be quiet,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so I feel like sometimes people manipulate me, or I allow myself to be manipulated, so
Yeah.
that I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna go, "Hey, you did this to so and so, and why don't I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't wanna watch people be treated like that in here." Well, that's
Yeah.
not my business either. So
Yeah.
zip it up. You know what I mean? Zip it
Well,
up.
I also think what we need to ask ourselves is, what's the intention of
Right.
the conversation, right? Like, are you
Yeah.
telling me because, like you said, you're venting, you're trying to figure out the best way to handle something,
Right.
you're looking for advice, you're looking for feedback. I'm down to have those conversations.
Right.
I'm down to give people, my 2 cents and what I would do and yada, yada, yada.
Right.
But if you're coming to me just to spread it, just to pass it on, just to have someone to talk about in a negative, like if we're not solution oriented in the conversation,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
know we're probably not having a productive
Mhm.
conversation about a thing that's happened.
Right.
Right. So set your boundaries, understand that you don't have to participate in these things. And it's okay to be like, tell someone like, like I'm good. I don't want to,
Mhm.
I'm down to give you solutions. I'm down to work with you to figure out the best way for you to manage this problem that you're having. But if you're just looking to stir the pot, like I'm not hungry, I don't
Yeah.
like tea,
Mm.
like whatever, I'm good, already have my
Yeah.
caffeine for the day. It's okay to set those boundaries in our center.
I
Um,
wish I could say I'm perfect at it. I'm not,
Gosh, yeah, heck
I'm
no, I'm
I'm
not perfect at
learning.
it.
And,
Yeah,
and at my age, I can still learn things, and
heck
that's
yeah.
I think that's good too. And along the lines of, you helping people get into this professional, because we do need more dispatchers.
Heck yeah.
Very difficult to, nobody's interested in working, period. It feels like,
Mhm,
when we have openings, nobody applies. Well, these
mhm.
last few times, we've had a couple here and there. And I find that, we can be very territorial,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
they're not, they're not catching on as fast as they should, or they're not doing this, or what did I tell you, or whatever. You have to be so careful with people, because if you don't adopt that attitude of their success is my success, and we all are a team, and so
Mhm.
we rise and fall on the premise of how weak are you, right?
Yeah.
if you're the weakest one, then we're only as strong as that.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of truth to that. And I think even in this profession, like we like to say not everybody's made for this job, right? It makes us feel like we're really special. I'm a multitasker and I can do these things and look at me and I'm so humble and, but we want to be rock stars. Who doesn't want to be who doesn't want to do CPR with somebody for 20 minutes and save their life? Who doesn't want to deliver babies? Who doesn't want to? Who wouldn't be thrilled to do those things?
Heck yeah.
To escalate to save somebody's life. I just, I think that's probably why I go over and above what maybe the confines of our jobs. And in a rural setting, it's easier to do that. So like where you would maybe have an officer doing something, making a phone call or doing a follow-up somehow with something, you may be the one doing that as a favor. It's not our job description.
Yeah.
But we can do that as a favor, like, hey, call this person up and see if they'll come into the office for me or whatever, so there is assistance that we give in this type of setting that you probably wouldn't in a larger agency.
Yeah.
You just pitch in.
Yeah. And in regards to like continuing education and continuing to educate ourselves, you're going to be venturing into starting an education page. And I know you mentioned that to me offline a bit. Tell me a little bit about that and what's your vision for what that'll look like in the future.
I think mostly it's, I'm hoping two things. One, it will educate the public, right, about what dispatchers do and what we can provide, what we need from them to partner with them. Because I like when I answer a call like like somebody's really freaking out.
Yeah.
I will say, you and I try to get their first name right away. You and I, we're going to do this together. I'm here with you now. We're going to do this together. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do that for you. But not everybody can actually get that in their brain when they first call because they're so hyped up and the adrenaline's just going.
Yeah.
So I would like to say that, okay, I can tell the people in my immediate community that this is what I need from you when you call this phone number.
Yeah.
If you don't have an emergency, instead of calling 911 and saying that it's not an emergency, here's our phone number. Put this in your phone. Put this on your refrigerator. Do this, When you call, we're going to ask you these questions. These are why we ask you these questions. Because I've had people, I had a fire the other day and all they cared about was, are you getting somebody here? I'm like, help is on the way, blah, blah, blah. Are there hazardous materials? Because we're supposed to ask about hazmat, So I asked about hazmat and they were like, it's a shop. There's hazmat, of course there's hazmat. Well, I wanted to tell my responders what was in the garage.
Yeah.
That's all, and it wasn't impeding them from coming, but the caller was very upset with me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So when is the right time to tell them, hey, I know, but this is what I need to ask you, right? When they're freaking out and yelling at you.
Yeah.
It's too late by then.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that giving them advance. And the other thing is that I would love to see kids, in high school, think about this career.
Heck yeah.
As a viable choice. It's not when I was coming up, man, this is my God love her. God rest her soul too. My mother would say to me, you don't have to worry about going to college or anything like that, right? Because you're going to get married and you're going to have children. right? That's your job. That's what you're going to do. But in the meantime, in school, in high school, take secretarial courses, right? Because if your husband ever leaves you, you'll have a fallback plan, right? So that's the message that I was,
yeah.
right? That was the times, right?
Yeah.
Early, let's see, late 1970s, or I graduated in 1980. So I was pretty proud of the fact that I could type and take shorthand and stuff, but I never thought I could be a police officer. I never thought I can go into this field. I knew nothing about that. Make it accessible to people. Make it something that, and instead of saying, oh, that's how they do things around here, this is a terrible place to work, this is, what I mean? Instead of doing that to people and saying, what'd you get a job here for? Just wait a year.
Yeah.
You'll know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not right that we do that to people. And I would like to see that change. And the only way you can do that is if you start with yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's amazing. And I think one thing that we miss a bit in all agencies when it comes to our social media, our outreach is we're not including dispatch. Big miss there.
Yes.
But B is the education piece, is that we should be utilizing our social media platforms as a department to educate our community. Like, I think sometimes our social media teams can get really caught up on creating like the viral cop reel, the viral thing. But in reality, I don't really care if people outside of my community get this education. I think it's great that they do, but the folks who are calling me are going to be the folks in my community. So I think we should be utilizing our social media teams to educate the community about our non-emergency numbers, about the questions you're going to be asked when you dial 911. And if we're not posting even like what can you report online, so you don't got to call me, all those things should be a constant rotation of information put out to our communities through our department's social medias, through our education formats, through the education pages that you're going to be creating, because you start with the community that impacts you right here, so they get the knowledge, and then hopefully, it dwindles out. I did a couple reels about non-emergency numbers, those basic things that we don't educate on, that we need to educate. We need to educate on 911 the same way we educate on earthquake drills in Cali and fire drills everywhere. It needs to be the same type of commitment to getting us out of a job. So people are overeducated. They don't have to just call 911 for a noise complaint,
Yeah, exactly. I also, we have a unique situation here because our county is very large. Forsyth is the county seat in Rosebud County. And then we have a satellite office in Colstrip, which is in the middle of the county. And then we have a satellite office in Ashland, which is in the south part of the country, which is bordered with the Northern Cheyenne Reservation.
Oh, wow.
They're BIA, and so that's a challenge also. We have, for our emergency services, we have a small, maybe a small group of people who volunteer just for quick response. Right now, the EMS crew that's in Forsyth, in the Forsyth area, is run by an amazing person who has so much experience, and he's a tactical medic too. And we love him, and he has done a lot for dispatch. He really, I mean, he's very encouraging. He'll let you know if you've done a good job on a call, which I think he doesn't have to do it. And it's pretty great that he does. Shout out to Keith. And so those are unique situations where, we have people in different offices. And sometimes the people that work in those places, of course, the administrators, work in the Forsyth office. So the guys in Ashland are not getting the same, you know what I mean? They're not rubbing elbows with these guys every day. So they're kind of out of the loop with things. And so it makes communication, and it's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of challenges. We have a lot of, we've done a lot of work in the last 6 months.
Awesome.
The administration is very committed to changing the culture and bringing in the equipment that we need to do our job. Because let's face it, you can live anywhere and you can do anything. But what people need, if you're gonna hire me to be a dispatcher, then give me the tools that I need to do that job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm going to be a
100%.
police officer in this community. Give me the tools I need to do this job. That's all they need to do, and support me.
Yeah.
Right. That's their role, is support me, train me, and put me out there, and let me watch your sex.
Awesome. I think that's an amazing segue into the final question that I ask everybody, because Jane, I feel like we could talk for hours.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, oh my God, it's a good thing. This is wonderful. But the last question as we wrap it up is, what advice would you give the aspiring dispatcher?
Boy. I would say dive in with both feet. Give yourself over to the process. Don't be afraid, because fear will paralyze you. Do the best that you can. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I was a baby dispatcher was from my fire chief. And he said that anything that you can do to advance help to another person is good enough. So don't pick apart everything that you do, criticize yourself. Did you get help to that person? Was it messy? Well, you can maybe do better, down the road. You won't, I guarantee you, and I will ask you this question, after you've learned a lesson in something, have you ever made that mistake again?
Heck yes. Yeah. Heck yeah.
That's how we learn, right? That's how we learn. And we just do it better the next time. That's all. So I would say, give yourself over. Love this job as much, and it will give you everything.
Awesome.
It really will.
Well, Jane, thank you so much for coming out in person and meeting me, signing up to virtually have this conversation. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I know being in a rural center can feel a little lonely sometimes. And I know you folks who are working in these rural centers, man, you're doing the work. You're doing the job's already tough, and you're doing it alone. So it's an even tougher job. So I appreciate you being willing to come out and share your experience, your lessons. And as you get that education page rolling and going, we'll definitely be blasting that out for you, for folks to join and jump on board as well.
And thank you for everything you do. And tell Claudia thank you.
I will do. I'll be right back with you, Jane. All right, everybody, that was another amazing episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. Jane, again, thank you so much for being willing to come on here and chat with me. I do believe we could talk for hours. It was such a wonderful conversation. I learned so much. And if you're interested in joining me on a show, you can do so by heading to theraspydispatcher.com. It's easy. Pick a date and time that works for you, and we'll get on here and have a little chat. As Jane said, Jane had a bunch of really good little tidbits. I got a bunch of notes on what to title this show, so I'm looking really forward to editing it. But just dive in with both feet. Sometimes you're going to get into this line of work and figure out that it's not for you. and that's okay, but you have to go all in first to figure that out. So if you're considering this line of work, take Jane's advice, dive in with both feet. Until next time, everybody, stay raspy. Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Dispatch podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, or maybe even submitting your own story, you can do all that and more at theraspydispatcher.com. Until next time, stay raspy.